So it's 4:34 on the 16th of December. We'll call this monthly meeting to order. First item is public input. I hear none. And so are we ready to move to new gen, or you want to hold on that, Pam?
I think we're going to have to hold. I haven't gotten a response from Mike.
Should we move to number 4?
Is Juan must have left and came back.
You got a phone call. I saw that.
Oh, okay.
There he is. He's back.
Okay. All right.
You want to go to 4 and get the pipeline?
Yes.
Okay, phase 2 pipeline presentation.
Okay.
Proposed route.
We do have Paul Smith and Bob Drake.
Hi, Pam.
Oh, we just moved you up in line a bit. Are you ready for your presentation?
Let me give Paul a call.
Yeah,
I'm here.
He's here.
Oh, Paul's here. Okay, good.
Yep, I'm ready. My participant screen sharing is disabled. Can you undisable that, Pam?
Yeah, I did it just a minute ago, so it should be showing up.
There we go. Do you all see the PowerPoint presentation?
Yes.
All right, perfect. So, good evening. Thanks for having Beta Group here tonight to present our evaluation of routing alternatives for this important project. As you know, this project is critical to establishing a second water supply source to ensure a continued supply of water to Bristol County Water Authority and their customers. Tonight, I'll be reviewing Beta's evaluation of 4 routing options to interconnect this proposed pipeline from where phase 1 will ultimately leave off at Kent Heights water tank site in East Providence to a proposed interconnection with the city of Pawtucket and the Pawtucket Water Supply Board. Project background, as you all are aware, Providence Water Supply Board provides both Bristol County Water Authority and East Providence their full entirety of their water system through the Cross Bay pipelines. To the north, Providence provides East Providence water through 232-inch steel pipes that were installed in 1967 that are situated on the bottom of the river, and to Bristol County's East Bay pipeline, the 24-inch steel pipe that was installed a little over 20 years ago. Neither water system has a backup supply, as both are completely reliant on Providence water. And all that interconnects these two right now is this 16-inch interconnection, which is more of a domestic water pipe. It's not a transmission main. It's not installed for the capacity to provide large volumes of water to East Providence or Bristol County. So why is redundancy important? Well, if there's a significant water main break in Providence, it could leave both East Providence and Bristol County without water, depending on the nature of the break. And as Bristol County knows too well, from what happened a year ago for the East Bay pipeline, we had a small hole that wreaked havoc on Bristol County till the late end of last year. It's extremely difficult to repair, but we ultimately repaired that via slip lining. Project goals ultimately were to create water system redundancy to ensure a continued supply of water should something happen. It's going to be constructed in 2 phases. Phase 1 establishes that interconnection between Bristol County and East Providence, that large diameter interconnection. That job has been bid and awarded this past September to CB Utility Company. Again, it's going to establish that large diameter interconnection so you can have a symbiotic relationship between East Providence and Bristol County. Should something happen, one can provide the other water on an emergency basis. It allows for the continued inspection and condition assessment of these assets, mainly the pipes that are going from Providence to East Providence. And it allows for the rehabilitation if needed. Phase 2 establishes that interconnection with Pawtucket Water System, providing for for that true second source of supply for both Bristol County and the city of East Providence. This continued supply of water to both will allow for the uninterrupted flow of water to your customers should there be an interruption in Providence, Pawtucket, or the Cross Bay pipelines themselves, because either interconnection is going to be sufficient enough to provide full flow. Just quickly on phase one. Phase one shown here in yellow, which will be completed in 2021, active by the end of the year, establishes that large diameter interconnection. It's a little over 10,000 feet from basically where the Knights of Columbus is, through the Village Green Apartments, the Citizens Bank property, and then residential side streets, State Road here, and then again, residential side streets as we move north to establish that interconnection with the city of East Providence. Again, this should be done active by this time next year. So tonight I'm going to go through the alternatives that we've evaluated as part of this process. We've evaluated 4 for the routing of a new dedicated 24 or 30-inch pipeline, depending on whether or not East Providence will be a party. Connecting at Kent Heights and then moving northerly. The average of the 4 alternatives is just over 25,000 feet. So on average, 25,600 linear feet, which is approximately 5 miles on average. Beta and Bristol County met with East Providence in early 2020 to discuss these 4 alternatives. That was just a general discussion of them, the pros and cons of the 4. At that time, Beta was requested to complete an alternatives analysis of the 4 routes. And I'll be discussing these 4 routes with you today. 3 of the 4, routes 1, 2, and 3, were previously conceptualized by the past consultant. During the proposal stage of these projects, Beta had identified another route. That is the 4th route. So we went back and looked at the first 3, and then again, the initial route that we had proposed. And ultimately, we're trying to discuss all 4 routes with you, the pros and cons, and I hope to move forward with the project and get the design going. So this figure shows really the southern half of the 4 routes. Alternative 1 in blue, alternative 2 in white, 3 in black, where it overlaps with alternative 4 as well. I'll get into the specifics of each and kind of show you some snapshots of the lay of the land of each alternative, so you guys can get a feel of what we're talking about for construction. To install 5 miles of pipe through a city isn't going to be without engineering challenges. All 4 routes involve crossing the interstate in one form or another. So we got to get from the south of 195 to the north of 195, and all 4 alternatives, that's unavoidable. And then the northern half, alternative 1 really goes along the banks of the Seekonk River in a railroad right of way. Alternative 2 continues up really through the gut of East Providence. And then alternatives 3 and 4 mirror one another for about 50% of the alignment up Pawtucket Avenue. All 4 routes, in addition to having to cross the interstate, have to cross the railroad here, the 10-mile river, or the Omega Pond. This alternative in blue is within the railroad right of way. So you have to cross it here, and then you're within the right of way for the entirety until you get to Pawtucket Avenue. And then up here in the very northern extent, you've got to cross the railroad one more time. So all 4 routes have 2 railroad crossings, a water body crossing, and the crossing of the interstate. Now I'll just go through each alternative a little more detailed. Alternative 1 starts at Kent Heights and heads westerly towards Pawtucket Avenue. You're on Pawtucket Avenue for a few hundred feet, and then you're on Bright Ridge Avenue. This is a photo of Bright Ridge Avenue, just a residential side street. You continue in these residential side street up Bliss Street until you get, oh, I skipped the picture. Till you get to Broadway. Broadway, you'll continue westerly. You're trying to get over towards Waterfront Drive. So you're heading westerly a few thousand feet to get to Waterfront Drive. This is Moran Avenue. And then this is Waterfront Drive. This is a photo of the crossing of the interstate. Here, the interstate clearance is about 20 feet, so construction by traditional means should be able to be accomplished. Trenching a pipe underneath that. Waterfront Drive does has the benefit of being off the beaten path here. It's not a major thoroughfare through the city of East Providence. There's not many businesses that would incur disruption. So this portion of Waterfront Drive lends itself to being a beneficial path, at least at first. Continuing northerly underneath the Henderson Highway bridges, again, these are very high, so you could construct the installation by traditional means. Then you get up to the north here by the Henderson Highway Bridge, you get to this oil terminal. Here's a photo down here showing the oil terminal. This would be a cause for concern based on the industry that's being performed up here. It's oil storage facilities, EPA sites, contaminated sites. It's not the best subsurface conditions for not only the long-term maintenance of the pipe, but just the costs for removal and disposal of excess soil would be costly. Continuing north, once you get behind the terminal, you're in the railroad right away. Originally in concept, this alignment was conceptualized because of the city's plans for development of Waterfront Drive. There was a three-phased approach for the development of Waterfront Drive that eventually would have had a third phase that would have extended the corridor north utilizing the railroad right away to Pawtucket Avenue. That has since hit the back burner and I believe fallen through. So it adds to the complexity of getting this done and permitted, because now you're within the railroad right away, and they have offset limitations, typically 30 feet from the center line of the tracks to even get permitted for the installation. And you start getting up into north of the Omega Pond Bridge, which would have to be replaced as part of this. You start getting into these structures up in here, which are closer than 30 feet, which really prohibit the installation within the right of way with the previous concept falling through. But in theory, this is where it would be installed, offset from the railroad track over here, off the picture, but I wanted to give you guys a feel for what they're talking about. Continuing in the right of way, up to Pawtucket Avenue. You break free from the right of way right up here, and then you'd have to go a few hundred feet back up to the proposed connection point with Pawtucket Water Supply. So that's really the first alternative in a nutshell. The second alternative is the same all the way to Broadway Street. So it's again over to Pawtucket Avenue, Bright Ridge Road to Bliss Street.
For a couple hours.
And instead of heading up Moran Avenue towards Waterfront, you're going to continue northerly on Broadway. This is the intersection of Broadway and Warren Avenue. It's a very busy intersection. So you'd have to trench through this intersection to get to the interstate. This is the overpass for 195. The clearance on this overpass is about 6 feet shorter, or not as high as the Waterfront Drive. This adds complexity to getting underneath here because it's only about 14 feet total clearance. Traditional means are really out of the picture here to trench underneath that. So in order to get from one side to the other, we're talking really occupying this intersection with a deep excavation and installing a pump via trenchless means underneath the overpass to the other side. So setting up where I'm showing on the mouse here and occupying the right of way for upwards of 2 months to install a large diameter water pipe to the other side, to the north side of the interstate. So that, as you can imagine, would cause pretty significant traffic-related concerns for the city of East Providence. Once you get to the other side, you could get off of Pawtucket Avenue and onto Agnes Street and onto North Hull, which now you start getting into areas that would really be more conducive to less disruption in construction. You got a park to the east side and it's a residential side street. This is moving up towards 44. You'd have to cross through 44. Now you're on Irving Avenue, north of 44. Vanderland Street, you're really missing the Henderson Highway, which is, one point of benefit to this route once you get beyond 195. It's just the issues with getting from the south side to the north side of 195. So those short-lived benefits start to become issues again as you start heading north up Broadway. You're moving north up, northerly up North Broadway, you come to this intersection with Roger Williams Avenue. This is a busy intersection. We're getting close to the 10-mile river here, you can see. This is the bridge, the existing bridge that goes over the 10-mile river. This is going to come up a few times here as I move forward. The size of water pipe that we're looking to install, 24-inch on the low end, 30-inch on the big end. It's just too large of a pipe to get anyone to approve us to connect to an existing bridge structure. The loading, when you talk about the material weight of the pipeline itself, plus the water weight, which is significant on a 24-inch diameter, never mind a 30-inch, is beyond the loads that DOT or bridge owner for a railroad would entertain us connect to. So in order to get from one side of the bridge to the other, it's in all likelihood going to have to be a dedicated pipe bridge. So a standalone pier system with the pipe cradled on top of that, offset from the bridge. So, bridge maintenance can still occur, and then maintenance of the pipeline can occur as needed. Shortly after that bridge, the railroad, where the crossing is, the water crossing is right here, I'm showing with my mouse, a couple hundred feet away, you come to the railroad crossing. This is the one crossing on the project that would occur beneath the existing railroad. This is an arch bridge with every utility you can think of in the roadway right now. Some of them multiple. So we have gas, sewer, drain, water, telecommunications, and again, some of them with multiple lines going through there. The only way we could get a water pipe through there is to center the excavator, because you can see with the nature of this bridge, you can't cheat it to a side and actually install it because your excavator is going to be hitting the side of the bridge. So this utility would have to go in the middle of the bridge, meaning every other utility would have to be relocated, and how they would be relocated, it'd be very difficult because again, every utility really needs to hug the center corridor of that existing bridgeway. So this is a difficult thing to achieve here, trying to get underneath that bridge. If you could, once you get through, you go around the corner to Wilson Avenue. This is a nice residential side street that would be conducive to, the installation of this pipeline back up to Pawtucket Avenue. Pawtucket Avenue, you would head northwest beyond the golf course through this nice new pavement, which is abutting the golf course, to the railroad. And now here we're hitting the rail. This is up here on the northern extent. Now we're hitting the railroad at grade, which is far more conducive to construction. There are a couple of ways this can be done. If we're lucky and there's maintenance that is planned for the railway, you might be able to coincide construction with some downtime at the railway. In which case you could coordinate that and just trench it through and replace the tracks. That being said, it's probably unlikely that's the way it's going to happen. The more realistic approach is going to be that we'd have to set up pits on either side and jack the pipe beneath the tracks. But again, I find this to be more conducive to construction as opposed to going underneath an arched bridge or over an existing aerial bridge over the railway. So that brings us through alternative 2. Alternative 3, I'm calling the Pawtucket Ave route, city streets. It leaves the Kent Heights tank site and heads up Dover Avenue, just a residential side street, and quickly goes back out to Pawtucket Avenue. So here we're already coming up on 195. And as you can see in this route, it's an aerial bridge over 195. So what we'd be talking about is connecting or buttressing the water pipe to the side of this bridge. And again, That's not something that's going to really be entertained by DOT due to the loading. So this really wasn't one of our conceptual alignments. It's just one that we reviewed, and that's our thoughts on it. So it really kind of puts a kink in the armor on this alignment right from the beginning. But I'm going to walk through the rest of it with you because the next alignment mirrors this for a significant portion. Continuing up Pawtucket Avenue, heading towards East Providence High School. This is a pedestrian overpass for the high school students. Getting under here shouldn't be an issue because it's not long in length, so you can go from one side to the other. That shouldn't be an issue. Coming up on 44, you excavate through the intersection with 44. Now we're heading up towards the next sheet. We're heading towards the 10 Mile River. Continuing up Pawtucket Avenue, now we're at the 10 Mile River Bridge. And again, our thoughts are a similar concept to what I was saying over here at Roger Williams Ave, where we envision, in all likelihood, a dedicated pipe bridge off to the east side of the existing bridge to get around this water body. You continue northerly on Pawtucket Avenue, heading in the direction of Newman Ave. So this Pawtucket Avenue, this is a 4-lane road that should be conducive to the installation. This is the intersection with Newman Avenue. In this alternative, we're going to head northwest on Pawtucket, heading towards that railroad bridge. And now we're at the railroad bridge. And again, it's an aerial bridge crossing that again would require one of two things. We connect to the bridge, or we offset and try to do an elevated like pipe pier bridge adjacent to it. But in order to do that, you'd need support columns that would have to be installed on the right of way. We've reached out to the railroad to discuss this preliminarily. That's not something that they'd entertain because it does create impediments within the right of way that they don't currently have, whether it's a vehicle driving down the right of way that currently has the ability to drive down the right of way and not go on top of the tracks. That would, we would impose on that ability by doing something of that nature. That they weren't really for that. And then continuing again on Pawtucket Ave, where it would be the same alignment as alternative 2 up by the golf course. This is the shortest alignment of the 4, but again, that's because it takes the most direct route, which isn't really feasible. And then lastly, this is the route that Beta initially proposed back in the proposal phase that we dug a little deeper into here. This route leaves Kent Heights up the residential side street, Clyde Ave, trying to get out to Warren Avenue. Once you get out to Warren Avenue, so this photo is taken right here at this 90-degree bend. This is the off-ramp from 195, so that's this off-ramp that you're looking at. This is over 20 feet of clearance, so excavating underneath that, we're not concerned with. So we could install beneath that off-ramp by via traditional means and into this DOT-owned land on the off-ramp radius. So that's right here on the overall map. This structure you see is no longer there. That was there for some short-term construction. What this allows us to do is set up and actually attack I-195 at grade and cross it via trenchless methods. This is a photo. I'm standing, my back is to the highway. I'm looking back at that overpass. Now I'm on the far side of the interstate looking back at that same overpass. So you can see the grade is pretty flat. And what this allows us to do is cross this interstate while within the DOT property and aiming towards this parking lot on the far side. So this parking lot is here on the far side. So really lessening our impact to the city of East Providence and traffic and those complaints that would be caused if we went certainly with alternative 2, trying to get underneath that overpass. Once you leave the parking lot, there is an electrical substation on the corner that we'd have to work with permit-wise with National Grid to make sure there's no concerns, but we have at least evaluated, is there another way to get out to the road if that poses an issue. And there is, in between these buildings, it would involve an easement, but we could get from the parking lot back out to Waterman Avenue if this residential side street posed a permitting problem or hurdle. From there, we're shooting westerly back toward Pawtucket Avenue and Pawtucket in the East Providence High School. So here we're back in the same alignment as that previous one, where the previous alignment took more of a direct route over the bridge. We've gone around the bridge, got under the highway, and then we're back mirroring that alternative 3. This is the intersection with Route 44. And then continuing north up Pawtucket Avenue. Same alignment, same concept, crossing the 10 Mile River. That's right here. Same concept on Pawtucket Avenue, all the way to the intersection with Newman. So here, this is the intersection with Newman Avenue. The previous alternative went straight, so that would be up towards this railroad with the bridge. That would pose an issue. What Beta's recommended is we veer northerly up Ferris Avenue. So that would be this right here. So go through the intersection and then we shoot up this gap, Ferris Avenue. Ferris Avenue is a nice residential side street, conducive to the installation. We get around the corner here, and now we're getting up on the railroad. And now we finally have another at-grade crossing. It's the only at-grade crossing in the entirety of this alignment from the Henderson Highway all the way up to where we're at. It's the only crossing that is really best suited for us to cross it with the large utility. Once we get from one side to the other, we come up on Newport Avenue. This is the intersection of Ferris and Newport. We'd be on Newport for a few hundred feet till we get to New Road. New Road connects Newport and Pawtucket up here to the north. So Newport Road is just a nice residential side street. We're gonna park to the south side. We get back up to Pawtucket Avenue and we got that next crossing a few hundred feet away. And again, it's another at-grade crossing. So both crossings of the railroad would be via trenchless technology. And the crossing of the interstate, again, would be trenchless technology. So all the crossings, all the critical crossings would be done in a trenchless manner with this approach. This is the second shortest of the 4 at pretty much coming in on the average, 25,700. Here's a summary of the 4. With Waterfront Drive really being the longest, even though it had benefits of portions of Waterfront Drive being conducive to construction, it really, once you get to Dexter Ave, really it becomes a cumbersome process going through the oil refinery in the railroad right away. The second option, has those significant hurdles of getting underneath 195. You can't do it by traditional means, so you got to do it by trenchless, which is the same thing we're kind of proposing in alternative 4, but now you're occupying the city right of way versus DOT property. And then that third one, it does offer the shortest distance, but again, buttressing up to that bridge really isn't a feasible concept. So it's showing a low total, but it's really not accurate because it's not attainable. And then, alternative 4, what Beta here is recommending to move forward with is 25,700 feet. It has the benefits of minimizing traffic-related impacts, crossing 195. And you're approaching both railroad crossings at grade and still maintaining the vast majority of the pipe within the right of way for accessing purposes, future maintenance purposes. And we do, by going around back up to Waterman Ave, we do avoid some stretches of Pawtucket Avenue, which does serve to minimize some of those concerns that the city would have in terms of overall impacts to Pawtucket Avenue. So that's where we are right now. Our next steps, confirmation of requirements, Department of Public Health. That has to do with the blending of waters from the 2 water sources. We do have a conference call with them tomorrow morning, coincidentally or not, to go over some of those logistics and what they've initially required. Alignment acceptance with the City of East Providence. Naturally, we're going through their city. We'd love to have some form of acceptance with them. And, you know, we're itching to move forward with the survey and design with, you know, alternative 4 based on how you guys are feeling about this at this time. With that, I thank you for giving me the opportunity to present. I'll answer any questions you may have.
Anyone have questions? I've got one. Paul, has this been reviewed with anyone from East Providence?
Not since to the best of my knowledge, not since our initial meeting, which was like in February of last year.
Okay.
These 4 concepts were generally spoken about. So nothing's changed in terms of the 4 alternatives. But in terms of what the recommendation is, to the best of my knowledge, they're not aware of what Beta is ultimately recommended to the board.
My understanding is that they agreed to participate in this design to go forward. And what I'm asking Pam, I guess, more than anyone, is if we say, fine, let's vote to approve this number 4 proposal, start the design, do we need a similar approval from East Providence in order to let you go forward?
Alan, actually, they have not agreed to contribute to the design. We had asked them to do that last year, and we never actually got a response. So
Okay.
at this point in time, we're still on our own. And we would like to start actually doing some of the survey work in the next couple months. I will be forwarding this to the mayor and the city council, but I did want to present it to the board first.
Fair enough. So we should then go ahead, if I understand correctly, since we're still the only one in the driver's seat, we should approve alternative number 4 and to move forward with the design. Is that a proper request for a motion?
Yes.
I have one other question, Alan.
Sure.
I only heard the word easement once throughout that, and that was in number 4, crossing from a parking lot. Are there any other easements that need to be accommodated?
Yeah, I would, depending on, I would expect more easements, Bob, to be, yes. There'd be an easement with DOT within the DOT radius. That parking lot, that's a private owner. So that parking lot would require an easement. When I was speaking specifically about leaving that or exiting that private property and getting back out to Waterman Avenue, that electrical substation, depending on permitting and proximity, some of those, when you get into high power stuff like that, they may have work restrictions on how close or proximate you can get to them. If that poses an issue, there'd be an additional easement going from the parking lot back out to Waterman Avenue. My main point in broadcasting this was that we've thought about potential hurdles there, and we've identified a solution. And that solution in that specific case would be an additional easement. So that's 3 right off the bat. Crossing the 10-mile river, depending on where the property lines start, that would be an easement with the city of East Providence. Crossing the railroads, depending on whether or not we can do it in the right of way or have to go onto private property, depending on laydown, and what the city may or may not allow and what the railroad may not allow, there could be additional easements there as well. So my expectation would be upwards of half dozen easements anyways to go the 5 miles. I think that's a realistic number, somewhere in that range.
I'm going to assume that option 4 is the cheapest, but my real question would be, should we be presenting this to East Providence to have them give their, I guess, blessing or approval before we go out and do surveying. Because I'd hate to have the expense of a survey and then be told, oh, you can't go that direction.
Well, wouldn't we have to approve it and say, we've looked at 4 alternatives. This is the one that is recommended by the engineers. The directors have approved moving forward. We want to show this to you, East Providence. If you have any problems, let us know.
Yeah, before we do any.
Yeah, but I mean, that would, but we're anxious to move forward with the design. Please schedule a review of this and let us know if there's any issues.
Right.
It's the best route we found.
Plus, we would need to set a timeline on them because we've been trying to get a response for several
Right.
months. But I think the idea is to offer this, offer to do a presentation for them, tell them this is the route we would like to go, and give them some time to provide some comments, and then set a deadline.
Have we
Otherwise, we'll be
requested,
waiting another year.
have we ever requested to be put on the town council, city council's agenda?
Yes.
We have, and I've sent letters to every single council person. I've
Okay.
not gotten a response.
Well,
Other than the mayor says he keeps trying to get us on, but we keep getting bumped.
Well, considering that we're at this point, I think we should try that before we move forward. They can say no or don't give us a response, but I think we should at least try to get them involved at this point before we make a decision on going forward.
Oh, why don't we do this? Engineering can't move forward on this one. We really don't want to show them the other 3 and give them an option to pick one of the other 3 if this is the one that our engineers say is the best one to go. That's the way I look at it. Why not approve it subject to any comment or input from East Providence that might change our decision?
For the very reason that anybody who gets presented one alternative would say, are there any other alternative? And I agree that alternative 4 certainly seems the best. When I went through this, I looked at alternative 1, it scared me because of all the unknowns regarding the waterfront and hazardous materials. And 2 and 3 just seemed, the level of difficulty kept going up with the crossings and so forth. And 4 seems an easy pick, so to speak. But if we want to get them on board, we should try to treat them as a partner and try to get on their agenda, try to present the 4 alternatives, saying the best alternative we believe is number 4, if that's what we believe, and see what they say. One of the questions I have is any of the alternatives that we were considering, is there any projects in the area that East Providence is considering doing with their water system that would be benefited by doing any one of these alternatives? Is there opportunity here for working together with them to upgrade parts of their system or something while we're in the neighborhood?
I think we have an easy way of getting that response with a quick telephone call from Steve.
I have a question. If we send them a letter, should it be from Pam and the board, or maybe Joe should get involved and put the language in such a way where they don't get offended, but realize that, by March 1st, we plan to take the necessary steps to put this in motion.
So,
I mean, we can give them a deadline, but if they don't respond, then what do we do?
if I can chime in, I think maybe a way to do it would be for the board to vote to endorse the 4th alternative. And then you could tell East Providence that the board has endorsed that alternative. I think you kind of want to signal to them that you're moving forward in a sense. And so maybe a vote to endorse it. And then you could communicate that to the city that the board has endorsed this and would like to sit with the city and go over that. And then typically the way we've been doing it is we have, we draft up the letter and have it come from Alan, or it could come from probably Alan would be best now, just because we're going to go through that transition with Pam. But I think some type of vote would be good, just to kind of, signal to them that you are moving along, and not only that you're moving along, but it's the board. It's the board that's endorsed it. It's not just, staff. But maybe the word endorsement softens it a little bit.
I appreciate that, Joe.
I think that's a good idea. We should, well, at the same time, we should preface it by saying, we've been studying this. We've been evaluating alternatives. We looked at 4 different alternatives. The one that we favor is alternative 4. We want to meet with you as soon as possible to see, to continue to explore your participation and keep you informed of what's going on.
Do we know when the East Providence City Council meets? What time of the month they meet?
No, not offhand.
And Juan, just like for your knowledge too, and for anybody else who wasn't on the board at the time, we kind of did the same process with the emergency connection. Beta presented, I think, 4 options or 3 options. The board endorsed one, and then we took that to East Providence and said, here are the alternatives. The board endorsed this one, and we'd like to sit with you. And that actually didn't go that smoothly the first time around.
Right.
But we did eventually get them to agree to the route that we endorsed. And I think it might be a little bit easier this time because there's a mayor to kind of go to directly. Last time we were dealing with just a city manager. And frankly, when we actually sat down at a meeting to go over the route, only one councilman showed up. And he put the kibosh on our preferred route because it went through his neighborhood.
Right.
So, but I think that same process can sort of be replicated where you endorse it, we go to East Providence, we sit down and go over them.
Is it, if we take an endorsement vote tonight and we prepare the letter and I send the letter, is it appropriate to say that we would like a response for our January meeting? Or do we want to give them to the February? What's going to be the enough space to not push them, but certainly enough time to let this thing go forward?
If we can find out when their meeting times are, in our letter, we could at the same time ask to attend a certain meeting, a particular meeting in January, say, and go from there.
The only caveat, yeah, I agree, but I think that maybe I suspect that when we sit down or communicate with the mayor, he and I don't want to speak for him, he may want to he may be the one who wants to put it on the council's agenda. It's just a little bit different. Politics are a little bit different there this time. So, yeah, we want to put some kind of time pressure on it. Not quite sure how we would phrase that.
If they were how soon would we say, go ahead and start the design?
March
Can we
1st?
do that tonight? If will there be, let me rephrase that. If we don't give the final approval until our February meeting, will that result in any way, will there be enough time to do the design so that the bid for construction will not be delayed? Will the construction still start on time at the spring of 22, which I think is what the overall plan is.
Was that directed towards me? I'm sorry.
Yeah, I
Yes, Smitty,
thought,
I think I can help answer that, Alan. Bob Jake with Beta Group. There's several outside factors that we have to address first. One of those components will be meeting with the Board of Health. I think that's going to play a major role on how quickly we can get this designed and so forth. We've had initial discussions with the Board of Health last year or earlier this year, and they have stated that they wanted a pilot study done on the water systems, the mixing of the water systems. So this in itself could potentially take up to 1 year to
oh my
perform.
God.
Yes, but no, this is why we're having the meeting. I think we're under the impression that this isn't, all their steps aren't required. So this is what our meeting on Thursday is going to be. And to say on record that we're going to be able to get this design completed within the year is a little premature right now.
Alan, when there's a minute, I have a general question,
Sure, George.
possibly for Beta. I'm just wondering, when I look at the maps at the end of all the alternatives, it says connect to Pawtucket water supply. And I'm just wondering, what does that mean? Does that mean there has to be more piping at that point to reach into Pawtucket?
Yes. From Pawtucket to their border.
Yes,
So
potentially.
my next logical question would be, should that engineering be part of this study?
I would suggest that it is. I know, Mike Crawford, if you could help me out here a little bit. I know you know a little more about Pawtucket's water and what would be required. I believe you do in terms of, because the figures make it appear, and I don't want it to be misled, that there's not existing infrastructure right there that's waiting for us to connect to.
Yeah, yeah. So at the Pawtucket border, there is distribution piping. So there is something to connect to. It would not be enough to supply both East Providence and the BCWA. It would be more of an emergency type interconnection. To be a full-scale redundant connection, there would be significant piping that would be required to get back closer to the center of the city.
But if we're looking for a full-scale redundancy, wouldn't it be appropriate to have that engineering part of this study? That's my question.
Is the city of Pawtucket going to pay for that? Mike?
Well,
Pam, do you have any background on that? I know the conversations were had because it was a significant investment, but whether or not both parties move forward with it would impact the amount of water they could essentially sell, may force them to reevaluate their investment.
I thought they agreed, because we originally sent letters that it was 8 million gallons a day, and they agreed that they would supply that. I thought we have that in writing.
We have it for 4, but the original study, on which Pawtucket eventually joined as well, they were going to provide 8 million gallons a day to East Providence and to Bristol County, and they would build the pipeline from their large main to the city border. But if it only ends up being Bristol County, they may not be willing to spend the amount of money necessary to do that.
So then it would follow, we should get the cost and cost estimate of what that mileage would be to make that final connection, if it has to be put into our system, if we're the only ones.
And the other question I have, just sort of piggybacked on the back of what we're talking about, is there some type of legal documentation with Pawtucket relative to the amount of water we're supposed to receive? I've heard there's something in writing, but is there some legal document that gives us that right? So we can't be superseded by somebody else in the future. That might be a question for our attorney.
Something we can look into. I do have a letter from Pawtucket saying they would be willing to sell us 4 MGD.
But my point
When
is,
we get to the point of we're actually going to build the pipeline, we would certainly need something more definite before then.
well, it seemed to me, that's a critical part of everything we're doing. And I'm just wondering if that should be done now.
Absolutely.
Well, I think the domino that you need to have fall to do that is East Providence. You need to know, you really need to know whether they're going to join.
Right, right.
And that's why there is, one thing I was thinking of maybe putting in a letter to East Providence is sort of sketching out a timeline so that they, we can kind of say to them, working backwards, here's the anticipated timeline and here's a date by which we would need to know.
That connectivity to Pawtucket is sort of the end game, but really, it really seems to me that everything has to be put together right now. Not have any loose ends. We're talking a lot of money here, and we can't, to me, logically start anything until we know what the full plan is and how it's going to be done, and where the approvals are, and where the assurances are.
I agree completely.
I think if there's a meeting tomorrow with the Board of Health, who knows what they're going to say. I think the more complete information we can provide to East Providence for them to look at, the better off we will be as far as them making the decision.
What kind of obstacles can we expect from the Board of Health?
Board of Health is going to be concerned about the mixing of the two supplies and any water quality repercussions within the distribution system. So they're very concerned about lead issues, for one.
But didn't you say, Pam, that Providence was changing the way that they were treating the water, and it was going to be a lot easier for us to blend the two?
It should be. It just depends on how much detailed testing the health department wants ahead of time.
Okay.
But is it a case of the health department could say no to this, or are they just going to condition it upon, how the connection's made and what needs to be done in order for the water to be safe, so on and so forth?
Theirs is more a water quality perspective. They just want to make sure that the resulting water quality will not cause any disturbances in the system. Or, they'll look at a number of different parameters, but lead is their main criteria.
But do you think there's anything that could come up in these meetings and the studies that could result in the health department saying that Pawtucket water and Bristol County water should not, and Providence water should not mix, and this project can't go forward?
I would never foresee that, no.
No, I agree with her. They may put conditions on it, but they're not going to stop it.
Right.
And that should not interfere with our design, because that's a treatment issue, which is handled at a particular location where we introduce chemicals or do something magic. Whereas the design itself tracks through, and to George's point, whenever we go into a crossing area designs, we are always going to run into issues that we don't have nailed down at the start. Things occur, situations occur, as Paul said. What happens if because of Narragansett, not Narragansett Electric, National Grid, they say we can't come too close to a particular area, we'll have to make some adjustment. But that's a minor adjustment. That does not preclude stopping the overall program to go forward. That all has to be done. That's, you know, this may be something that's a quarter of a mile long, an influence, but we still have 5 miles to deal with. We need to move forward with that design.
Right. And my point in all of this, and I agree with you completely, Alan, my point here was getting at a delay in the design. What goes on with the health department shouldn't delay the design for the most part.
Correct.
And that should be able to go forward and start relatively soon, regardless of what the health department says. The only thing that could happen is there'd be amendments to that design to do, as you mentioned, and liked it phrased this way, was to do whatever magic it takes to get the water to come here. But I think that the question that George raises, which I think is the biggest question, is do we have a commitment from the city, from the Pawtucket Water Supply Board to give us water, whether it's Bristol County only or a combination of East Providence and Bristol County? Because you hate to go through all of this, have the ribbon cutting ceremony ready to go and find out there's no water for us to have.
Well, I think it's obvious that if in fact East Providence says, no, we are not going to join you, then while the smaller pipe would make that 5 mile cost less to install, the construction, we would have to pick up the difference for, I don't know how many miles it is. Mike, how many miles is it to the Pawtucket
mile.
border? About a
another
mile.
mile, yeah.
So
About a
we
little
would have
bit.
to pick that up and we would have to put that into our planning. That's all.
But we need that guidance from the Pawtucket Water Supply Board. If the Pawtucket Water Supply Board says, if it's Bristol County and East Providence, this is what we will do. If it's Bristol County only, this is what we will do.
I've been
And,
talking,
reduce that to writing so that we all have assurances that we're going to get the water, whether we go with East Providence or not.
I think everyone would agree. I hope everyone would agree that if in fact we have to downsize the pipe, the smaller pipe, to go the rest of the way on phase 2, that would be a tragedy, because at some point in the future, East Providence is going to need that. Now, I talked with Pam this past week and I said, I suggest that we go back and set up a meeting with the Catherine Crawley, who's head of the Water Resources Board, with the state planner, with the director of administration, to explain this situation to the state. I know they're not anxious to give us money. I know we have this issue over the $680,000 that we're holding in escrow that they never paid us. But I think this has got to be explained to the state. You cannot let a regional project like this go and let it go in the wrong way. It's got to be done. There's got to be some way to cover that cost so that the right size pipe gets put in. It would be an absolute tragedy if that was not the case. I mean, we got work to do. And I think this is the time to do that. I'm just saying, if, for purposes of having Joe move forward and having us take a vote tonight, my suggestion is, can we give them a February deadline? Is that deadly, or is a January deadline absolutely necessary? What do you think, Joe?
When you say deadline, you mean deadline for them to decide whether they're in or out?
Deadline to tell us whether they have any objection to number 4.
Yeah,
So
I
we can
think,
start this thing. And then we need to get that other information. We need to find out what they're going to do.
I think that finding out what they're going to do is really critical. I think it's critical to a lot of things.
Sure.
And at some point, and maybe that's where we broach that when we sit and talk about the route, is to say, look, there's too many variables and you're the biggest one, and we've got to know by a certain, we'll have to pick a date, but you really have to know whether they're going to be on board or not.
Can we set up a meeting with the mayor in early January?
Yeah, I think if the board endorses this tonight, we draft up a letter to the mayor and request a meeting, ASAP. We can phrase it in a way that not like, hey, you got to let us know by our January meeting, but we can certainly say the board meets again on January X. We'd like to be able to, to meet before then to report back to the board. And then we can tell the mayor that, look, we're under some time crunches here and you've got to, we got to come up with your commitment, whether you're going to join in this project or not. So honestly, a deadline, sometimes a deadline is the best thing to, you don't want to leave it open-ended. So
Well,
at some point,
Chris Stanley found out that they meet the fourth Tuesday of every month. So they'll be meeting in January and meeting in February. So we could give them a March 1st date or an April 1st date. It's just a question of how much room you want to give them. Then maybe just sit on their hands and say nothing or say no.
Well, if we endorse this tonight, we're not saying to the engineers, start designing tomorrow.
Correct.
We're just saying, this is the next step we're taking, and then we're telling East Providence, this is how far we've gone.
And we would bring the engineers to give the presentation to them
Correct.
so that they understand exactly what we've endorsed.
Yep.
And at that, we also will explain what the options are, what's going to happen at the other end of the line from
And I'm
Pawtucket.
going to make a motion, we endorse the alternate 4.
Excellent. Is there a second?
Second.
Do we want to beat this further or are we ready to vote?
I'm ready to vote.
Okay, let's take this off the screen so we can see everybody because I only see 5, 6 people here. Can we stop the screen share?
Yes, all set.
Very good.
So now we need to we need to see everybody.
Okay. I think the only one that's not here is Gina, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So
Yes.
there should be 8 of us you can see, including yourself.
I don't, the way my screen is set up right now, I'm trying to see everybody and I don't.
I do.
I see you twice, Alan, but I'm not sure quite why that is.
Yeah, that's because,
Gotta remove one.
Okay.
He only gets 1 vote.
where am I here? Now I
There you
lost
are.
everything.
You're up top.
Okay, so if I can't see anything, so Bill, if you can see everybody, please go around and ask for the vote.
Okay. Alan,
I'm holding my hand up. I'm saying yes.
John,
Yes.
Tom,
Yes,
Chris, Bob,
Yes.
George,
No,
Juan.
Yes.
I vote yes. So it is 7-1 in favor.
That's fine.
Okay.
Now I lost everything.
You.
But you had that fixed, Alan.
You have to invest some money in that, Alan.
Oh, well. Bill, keep going with the meeting because I've got to come back in again.
All right.
Please.
Can we go back to number 3, Pam?
And yes, we have Mike Maker, who's with New Gen Strategies. Michael firm has been working on our rate study. They got a little postponed as they also worked on the Providence Water rate filing earlier this year, which took up quite a bit of time. So once that was done, we jumped back into the rate study. And what New Gen did is they built a full model using all of our data and our customer information and put that all together. And Mike if you want to present what you've got so far.
Yes, thank you, Pam. I'm going to try to share my screen here. Everybody, you see this? Yes.
Yes, thank you.
All right, well, good evening, members of the board. Thank you for having me tonight. You're probably going to start getting the weather we're getting right now coming your way, so it's nice to be able to do it virtually. So in the presentation, I'm going to go over the study assumptions, current charges and rates you're currently charging your customers, looking at current and alternative rate designs. In addition to the current design, we looked at 2 alternative rate designs. And then projecting those charges and rates forward over the next 5 years for all 3 of those rate designs, and then some sample bills for how it affects typical customers. So just some guiding principles and objectives. The water system must be financially self-supporting. I don't think that's a real issue here. You don't really have a general fund you can pull from. You can't, take from the town's general fund. So being an authority, it's already self-supporting. The utility should maintain reserves to provide for contingencies and unplanned expenses. Water charges and rates should be kept as low as possible over time. And you'll see over time there is italicized, because you can defer maintenance and not do any projects and invest in your system, and you'll have the lowest rates in the area. But then something's going to happen, something's going to blow up, you're going to have a water main break, and then you're going to need to jack your rates up. So the key is to do steady increases over time. So our objective for the study was to ensure charges and rates are stable through sound financial management. And we do that by reviewing the fund to maintain stability and preparing a long-term financial plan. So some of the factors that affect charges and rates, these I guess you consider are the assumptions. Obviously your operating and maintenance expenses, your salaries, benefits, materials, things like that. Obviously your biggest one is going to be the cost of water from Providence. Right now, we're escalating budgeted rates or budgeted expenses 4% each year to cover inflation, just being conservative there. Capital improvement plans, so that's your investment in supply and distribution. Pam and her staff have provided us a 10-year capital plan, so that's been incorporated. Any debt service, so that's both existing principal and interest payments you're paying now, as well as any future debt payments that are anticipated based on any capital projects that are going to be either loan funded or debt funded or bond funded. Any customer changes, and we actually in the model, we split out customer changes and metered water changes separately, so you can track those separately, because you may actually be getting more customers in the service area, but we're finding they're using less nationally due to low flow fixtures, conservation efforts. So you may be actually adding a handful of customers here and there, but per capita, they're using less. To be conservative, we are assuming that the service area is fairly built out in terms of customers. So we're not showing any growth in customers, and we're actually showing a slight decline in usage. So we're showing a 0.5% decrease per year in water usage. And then lastly, miscellaneous revenues, that's just anything other than your rates and charges. So this is going to be anything that will offset the cost you need to collect from customers. That's going to be things like penalties, interest, any miscellaneous charges. So these are your current charges and rates. This is fiscal year 2021. You have a fixed charge that varies by meter size, which we call a service charge. Most of your customers are going to fall into that 5/8 category. That's going to be a residential customer. You might have some large residential customers on a 3/4 inch or maybe even a 1 inch. But you can see right now, most of your residential customers pay the quarterly charge at $93.25 per quarter. And if you look at the bottom of that same table, there's a 5/8 inch senior citizen. And those customers actually receive a discount of $16.06 per quarter, or roughly $5.35 per month. So, you want to pay attention to that, because you'll see in some of the alternatives, we discuss that further. So that's just your fixed charge. That's regardless of how much water you use. That's just the water available to your house or to your business. Now we move on to the metered rates. That's your variable rates. So that is actually dependent on how much water you use. And here you can see you have a 5-tier block rate design. And you can see the tiers in the second and third column, that's for monthly customers. And then the fourth and fifth column are for quarterly customers. And again, the monthly is just 1/3 of the quarterly, or the quarterly is 3 times the monthly. So it's consistent and works accordingly. And you can see the rate there of $4.06 is tier 1. So for example, we're a residential customer. If you use over 1,500 cubic feet, you would pay $4.06 per 100 cubic feet, up to 15. And then once you go past that, you would then pay $11.46 per 100 cubic feet, and so on and so forth. So as I mentioned before, we looked at 3 designs. So the current rate design, as I just showed you, the service charges, monthly and quarterly, vary by meter size, the senior citizen service charge discount, and then the 5-tier metered rates, which are charged per 100 cubic feet. The first alternative design we looked at simply takes the customers and bills everybody on a monthly basis. So now we're not billing anybody on a quarterly basis. Everyone is monthly. Of course, what comes with this, most of your other bills that customers receive are monthly bills, their cable bill, their electric bill, their cell phone bill. So it helps them kind of get into the same rhythm they are with other bills. It also helps with budget billing. They're used to seeing it every month as opposed to, every 3 months a bill pops up. That could be a burden for some. And you'll also notice I mentioned there in green, AWWA based. So AWWA, as most of you probably know, is American Water Works Association. They have equivalents for meter sizes they recommend based on the capacity of water to flow through each meter size. And your service charges now are pretty close to those, so it's just a minor tweak to get to the American Water Works Association based ones. And that's the only thing that changes in alternative 1, is really just going everybody being billed monthly. Alternative rate design 2, there are a few moving parts on this. So this is one we're going to have to flush out, but we did want to discuss it with you today just to get your opinion on it. So again, just like alternative rate design 1, everyone would be billed monthly. We make that small tweak to make everybody in AWWA based rates. And then we're gradually eliminating the senior citizen service charge. So we're doing this over 5 years. So that $5.35 discount that they get now, if they're on a monthly basis, would go to $4 the next year, $3, $2, $1, and then you'd get to a point where they would pay the same service charge as everybody else. And then lastly, we would be moving from 5-tiered rates to 4-tiered rates. So we're really chopping off the largest tier, the tier 5, and we're making the tier 1 a lot smaller, what we call a lifeline tier. So it's going to be really just your essential usage. So somebody who doesn't use a lot of water, it's just going to be cooking and cleaning and bathing, and any essential or not essential, but any excessive usage after that would be in the tier 2, tier 3, and so forth. So as I mentioned at the bottom, it also says that from fiscal year 22 through 26, that's the next 5 years, all these rate designs reflect a roughly 4% annual increase in revenue each and every year. So regardless of which design you go with, they will all bring in the same amount of revenue. However, once you get to rate design 2, it's really which customers it affects that you're going to see differences. So you'll still bring the same amount of revenue, but different customers are going to be affected differently. So this is if you just did your current rate design and you just raised the rates 4% per year. Fairly straightforward. All these rates should just reflect a 4% increase. You can see the service charges there, and then the senior citizen service charges, and then the tiered rates monthly and quarterly. Now we go to alternative design 1. Now you no longer see any quarterly service charges because everybody's on a monthly service basis. But you can see the rates are fairly similar because you really already have your design, almost ready to go to be monthly, because you already have your monthly rates in multiples of quarterly rates, or divided by 3. So it, a lot of the work for the monthly design is already set up. The real issue you're probably going to have, or not really an issue, but you'll have some additional costs in terms of more postage, more billing and customer service handling for that monthly basis. Hopefully you can make some of that up with more regular payment. Maybe you can get some more customers on automatic debit, things like that. So. Now the last design is the one I mentioned that has a lot of moving parts. So here again, the monthly service charges are fairly similar to alternative rate design 1. But you can see there's some changes to the 4 tiers. So as before, the tier 1 was 0 to, I believe it was 500 for monthly. Now that would be dropping 0 to 200. So it's going to be getting less usage in that first tier, but the rate is less than it would have been. And then second tier starts at 201 going to 1500. So it stops at the same place that the current tier did. Tier 3, I believe, is the same, 1500 to 10,000. And then tier 4 is just over 10,000, whereas before tier 4 was 10,000 to 30, and then tier 5 was over 30,000. So again, there's some moving parts, and the actual rate differences have an impact. That's something we're going to need to flush out to make sure we can really satisfy the customers that need the assistance. And then you'll see that note, the monthly senior citizens discount of $535 is gradually eliminated over the next 5 years. As I mentioned before, it's currently $535. That would drop to $4, $3, $2, $1. And then you can see in 2026, the monthly service charge and the monthly senior citizen service charge are the same at $36.45. So at that point, the discount is eliminated. So this is the impact on some typical customers. So here in the first column, we just have a user and what percentile group they fall in. So residential customer, again, typically uses a 5/8" meter. You can see a 25th percentile customer is a small user. That's a customer now uses about 700 cubic feet per quarter. They use about 233 per month. Your median user uses about 1,200 cubic feet per quarter or 400 per month. So that is roughly half of your customers use below 400 cubic feet and half use above that. And then a large residential customer uses about 1,900 cubic feet per quarter or 633 cubic feet per month. And then you can see in the third column what their bill is right now. So that's the current bills. The fourth column is what that bill would go up to with just that 4% rate increase. And then the fifth column would be with alternative rate design 1. You can see those are fairly similar to if they just went with the current rate design. So not a big change, just going to monthly. And then the last column is if you went with the alternative 2 design. And here you can see it's going to vary based on the customer. And even the customers that don't show on here, their impact is different as well. And I can provide that detail later if interested, but that's something Pam, myself, and her staff are going to have to work on trying to get a happy balance if that's the design we want to go with. And then the 3 rows at the end are just for a senior citizen. Again, this is all for just fiscal year 2022, so it only reflects that decrease of the discount from $535 to $4. So obviously, if you were to do rates the years after this, the senior citizen ones would be $1 less each time. So I know that's a lot to take in. Any questions on that?
People are living longer, are they not? And so people are dying, but at the same time, more people who are alive are becoming 65 and qualifying. How did you figure that into the setup?
So I did not take into account any age-based or when people are living or dying. We just simply looked at how many customers are currently 65 and older. That data is in the model in terms of staff provided how many customers there are. So we did not assume that number is going to increase or decrease. Right now, keeping the customer base as built out, we're assuming the same number of customers would stay. So.
But since people are living longer, then the ones that are over 65 are still there, and every year more people qualify. So shouldn't the over 65 group be gradually growing at some tiny percentage?
I suppose if you kept your customer base the same and more were becoming senior citizens, you'd have to take some away from residential and add them to senior citizen. We didn't go to that level of detail, but we can certainly discuss that with staff and put some sort of factor in there.
Well, I mean, I say that because my understanding is that Rhode Island is among the states at the very top and when it turns to the senior population. And unless we get wiped out with COVID, those that survive are gonna live longer or are living longer.
Yep.
What's the percentage of our customers that are seniors now?
I actually can give you a number for that. Hold on.
Can we get a copy of that presentation, please?
Absolutely.
Yes.
So
You're
for
right, Bob.
example,
We want to look at it.
you have about 2,750 customers are senior citizens out of a total 17,000. So let's see what that means.
20%.
Those are the ones that take the discount. Alan, are you thinking that some point in time we would have to let people when they turn 65 sign up and then let them know that slowly but surely, 5 years from that date, it'll be zero? Or will there be a time when we're thinking about making that practice no longer an option?
My thought was that when we change the bottom end of this, that a number of seniors are going to, who will likely use less water anyway, and that they may qualify for some advantage in the lower amount that they're using, even though we're gradually phasing out their discount. And I think we have to be transparent when we vote finally to institute this thing, whatever we pick. I think we have to have the public hearing, and I think we have to take ads out into the local papers and explain exactly what's going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think we want to share with them what started out as something like a little over $30,000 is now up over 200 and something thousand dollars.
Yeah.
And it's a significant portion. And we're trying to even things out. That's all.
Sure.
I have some questions. One of the things with regard to fees, you always try to make them as fair and equitable as possible and distribute the costs to the customers that cause the costs of the operation. And one of the things that's always been a mystery, I think, is the rate structure that Bristol County Water Authority has with regard to the variable charges. It's not an inclining block rate, it's not a declining block rate, it's a combination of both. The first rate is very low, it then goes up, and then it goes down, and then it goes down, and then it meets the original first category in unit cost, really bizarrely as far as I'm concerned, and then it jumps up again. And to me, that is a rate structure that is not able to be explained at all to a customer.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that in rate making, one of the rules is to have it easily understandable and easy to implement. And I don't think our rate structure is that right now. And I think one of the things that I'm surprised I don't see here is seeing a alternative that would have a water use rate that would be the same for all the classes of customers. And that would be a much fairer thing. There's nothing that really distinguishes any of the customers in our system as to why they would have, why somebody who uses a lot of water would have a lower rate than I do, who doesn't use as much water. It's not conservation oriented. And I think it's the rate structure as currently exists needs to be revamped entirely. And what you're proposing is just a continuation of a rate structure that I don't think is in keeping with the times of other rate structures around the state and around the region and around the country. If you compare Bristol County's rate structure with the others in the state, I think you find Bristol County is standing all by itself. And
well, there's a reason.
Regarding the senior discount, as a senior, I enjoy that discount as I do with regard to the taxes in the town of Bristol. I think it's, I could sit here and say academically and theoretically, there shouldn't be a senior rate, but I don't know how you're ever going to go and hold a public hearing and make a presentation and say we're doing away with senior rates, because everybody wants their rates lower, and you can't just say, well, you use less water, so your rate's going to be lower. Everybody's just going to say you're taking a benefit away that I've had for the last 20 years.
Yeah.
So that's going to be a hard sell.
If I could jump in, I think the
Go ahead,
rates,
Mark.
the rate structure we have, if you go back in history, and Joe, you can jump in on this. A lot of those fluctuations on the high end, it went down in that fourth tier, and that was to keep some of the industrial accounts that we had that used a lot of money from leaving the area. Okay, I'm not that that's been real successful. And the commercial rates that restaurants and people use that use a lot more than the average residential customer. I think it tried to keep that at a level. And I think the reason it went back up on the high end were some of the real large accounts like the college and whatever could probably sustain those higher costs than could some of the commercial accounts and whatever. So there was some thought behind it, I think, at the time, but it may not be relevant at this point in time.
There was definitely thought behind it. What I'm saying is the thinking behind it is archaic thinking, and nobody else in the state of Rhode Island has a rate structure that varies on the usage rate as much as Bristol County. And if you do a comparison, you'll see that Bristol County sticks out like a sore thumb.
Right, we have one rate too. A lot of towns might have a commercial rate versus a residential rate as well. So
I think we have to do a comparison, and that has to be a part of any presentation is done.
Yeah, I will agree. You're right. And I looked at the rate design, and it is not a true inclining block. So you notice I didn't call it that, where it goes up really high and then comes back down. It matches the first tier and then it goes up again. But you will notice, let me share my screen again. The alternative design 2 does not maintain that. It actually does change it here.
I thought that's what this whole discussion was about. But,
Right.
I think everybody here knows my position on the senior citizen rate, and I'm not going to change it.
So you'll see here, it actually, it is inclining for the first 3 tiers. And then this actually, the last rate does go down. I wasn't sure how married everyone was to the current rate design, and I don't know how much you wanted to change it. And then, as I mentioned before, once you start changing things like that, you may bring in the same amount of total revenue, but you're going to see customers with decreases in their bills. You're going to see customers with double-digit increases, 20% increases. So you got to be careful when you start moving parts around, unless you can somehow do it gradually. I mean, I in the model, I have the top 20 customers. I can tell you what the impact is on them. I have residential customers from 0 cubic feet all the way up to 20,000 cubic feet. And you can see how that affects them. There's a curve that shows so I mean, once you start willy-nilly just changing things around, it's gonna have an effect on different customers. So it's a tough pill to swallow.
Michael, if in fact we are talking about phasing out the senior discount over a 5-year period, could we not also do the same thing in evening out the rates for the rest of it, the water rate part, over a 5-year period?
Yeah, we would just, that's why I'm saying these are not the final rates. We're going to need to do some discussion with staff to figure out how that looks. Because I know they were interested in chopping off the top tier. They're interested in doing a lifeline. It's just how quickly you can do those things is what the impact's going to be. Yes, you're right.
How many people are in the lifeline?
How many just use the 200?
Yeah.
You're asking me a lot of questions on the spot here.
Alan, do they have a senior citizen discount in Barrington for taxes?
Yes, it's very small.
They have one in Bristol.
Couple $100.
They have one in Bristol. We have one in Warren. That's one. I don't see how we can turn around and tell the public we're going to do away with the senior citizen rate on their water bill.
Yeah. Right. One of the thoughts of the lifeline rate was right now, senior citizens don't have to qualify based on their ability to pay to get the discount.
Well, they shouldn't. They're a senior citizen.
I know, I'm one too. I don't get one in my town, but the thought was the lifeline rate would help the senior citizen that has low volume, but also there's young people and people who are strapped for money, not necessarily seniors, that could benefit from that lifeline rate. And I think that was part of the original thought, that the senior rate may phase out and the lifeline rate come in, and those really deserving to get a
Unfortunately, the
lower
poor
rate.
seniors are gonna phase out anyway.
So, well, part of it too, it comes down to you give too many discounts and you're going to get someone like the college, someone's going to pay. And we, no matter what structure we use, we have to go through a lot of the software testing to make sure that we're in a revenue neutral condition, because it could be disastrous if a new rate tier produced 10% less revenue.
I understand what you're saying, Mark.
Somebody's got to pay, and
I
it's going to.
understand your point, Mark. Somebody must pay, but we are giving them this benefit now. I don't see how we can turn around and tell them.
Right. That's up to the board. I mean,
exactly.
The authority's going to work around whatever the board decides, but I'm just trying to tell you some of the thoughts that went behind a lifeline, which might benefit some people that are on 65 that have problems paying their bill every and there's an option.
Mark is right. Senior citizen does not mean low income. There's a lot of senior citizens that have very high incomes and their fixed incomes that are very high fixed income.
Right. Yeah. But I believe some utilities have people qualify based on their earnings to get the discount.
You don't want to get into that game either, though. You don't want to be verifying
we're not in that
income
business.
and no.
No, we're not in that business. We're not big enough to take that on.
No. That's why a lifeline, everybody gets the lifeline. Even large customers get it. They just blow right through it.
Right.
Those who stay within the lifeline, they will pay a lower rate for their essential water use.
Right.
That would be, that would help all low income customers, not just those who are 65 and older.
Yeah.
I want to make
in John's point, I think once you try to change senior discount to something else, they're not going to believe you. You got to keep the title or something on the bill that says senior discount. Otherwise, they're going to say this is just another way for the water authority to get around us and get more money from us. You can show them all the data, the information. But I think I'm with John on this. If you label it something else and that more people could qualify for that because they use less water, the seniors are going to say, hey, we're getting robbed. We're getting screwed. We've had this benefit. Guy could be 85 in the room and said, I've had this for 20 years. You want to take it away from me. Right, John? That's what they're going to say.
I'm not exactly. I'm not saying that a lot of them need this benefit. I'm just saying that we've given it to them. I don't know how we go back and say we're taking it away.
Correct.
Yeah. I mean, part of it is to freeze the senior discount that it doesn't increase in the same amount that the rates go up every year. So
I thought we did that.
You did that years ago.
We've done that, and that's what we've done. So it's say $15, $16 or whatever it is, that it doesn't go up in the same multiple. It stays at $16. So there's a point where that's going to be every time we do a rate increase, it's going to be a smaller part of the bill.
Michael, what
you
is
do
the
in a rate
overlap?
increase.
What's the overlap of the people who currently use no more than 200 versus the seniors of that group that use only 200?
I don't think I can do that on the fly. I'll have to get back to you on that one.
You understand what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Because
I did look up usage for 200 is about 29% of your total usage is under 200 cubic feet. So that would be the new tier one, roughly 30% of the usage.
Well, I think Rhode Island is 20% seniors, something like that. So there's a relationship in there, but obviously some other people other than seniors may be getting that very low rate at the present time anyway.
Yeah, the one thing
one of the problems we have with the senior rate, Alan, is we make people qualify for it. Because what happens, there's a senior that owns a house and then his kids move in with them. They end up in a nursing home, but now the son is in the house. He's now 65.
Right.
But the property is earmarked as a 65 account. So every 3 years we make them sign like an affidavit and come in and show their whatever they have to do to prove that the bill payer on that account is 65 or older. So there's a lot of turnover on that end.
Well, that's not unreasonable.
And it's expensive. I mean, it's
That's
a
not
cost
unreasonable.
for us to maintain that.
The one thing I just want to point out is customers don't really care what the rates are. They care what their bill is. So if you can show them your bill is only going to go up, the 4% inflation, but you're going to be doing away with this discount. However, your bill's not really changing. I think that's more important than talking about the minutia of the different rates.
Right. That's a tough sell, though. Just the word senior discount, like John says. It's a tough sell.
Most of those people see the word senior discount. They don't even know what it is. They don't know if
I
it's
agree
$50,
with you, John.
$5.
We made it
They
this far to
see
get that
senior
discount, right?
But we're not removing it. I mean, for 5 years, it'll still show on the bill a senior discount.
Yeah, sure, but you're lowering it and then you're getting rid of it.
You just said it didn't
They'll
matter
see
what
that.
number it was.
They'll know that.
It's not clear to me what we're trying to accomplish with this rejuggling of the rates. I mean, Mark raised one point, which is reducing the administrative cost of recertification. Other than that, we're moving stuff around, but I'm not sure what the end objective is and whether we're really getting anywhere.
Well, the concept originally, Tom, was that the senior discount was taking a much bigger bite than it had originally. And we took a movement a few years ago to stop the increase from going up. And that's in fact, that's when we made the decision not just to have one water rate, but to have a base rate, regardless of whether you use water or not, just to have the pipes there. And that saved us a lot of grief. We instituted that some years ago, and then we add the water on top of it. Some places don't even do that. They just have one bill.
What I don't see in the presentation we were looking at is what will be the percentage increase for those who are getting the senior discount, and what will be the percentage saving for those who are not. And that's the way I think people will look at it now.
Right.
Some look at it.
I mean, there's seniors that use a heck of a lot of water.
Yeah.
The seniors so you can't say what the effect is going to be on 65. There's some very frugal over 65 that do save the money, but there's people over 65 that get the discount and their water bills are $600 a quarter or $700 a quarter because they water their lawns, they fill their pools.
Wait, but isn't the senior discount on the base charge only and not on the variable charge?
It's just on the base charge.
Right.
It's not on the water, not in the cost of the water.
Right. So the ones who use a whole lot of water are paying more regardless of whether there's a senior discount or not.
Right. It's just
That's right.
just on the base fee.
Right.
Yeah. So Mark's saying, $15 off of 600, it's not a very high percentage of a discount.
Yep. And that's what I'm reacting to. I was looking at my bill earlier in our discussion. And I'm not convinced that we are accomplishing something worth the effort, to be blunt.
Yeah, and when you did freeze the senior discount, and as bills are increasing, that senior discount is becoming less and less of a percentage of that bill, so as you
But
mentioned.
the customer thinks he's still getting something.
Yeah.
I think we have to realize the senior discount is not the big reason we're looking at this. I mean, we're looking, to simplify the rate structure and maybe not have it go up and down like a roller coaster. The study, but there's a lot that goes into the study of the impact. When you give senior discount and you give a lifeline rate, that whole bottom is going to pay a lot less money. Somebody's got to pay for that. And if it's like Mike said, somebody might be affected 20%. The college. This is why we'd have to run numbers to see the impact on the college and those top 10 accounts that are important to us that, if they absorb most of the cost, they're not going to be happy that their water rates went up 25%. But somebody's got to pay. So it's got to be massaged. Like Mike says, it's got to be massaged, looked at. We got to run our data through the new rates and see how it compares to revenue neutrality.
Yeah, one of the
It's-
things we'll do is we'll provide the rates to Joe Granata before you decide to implement anything, and he can run it through the numbers and see, make sure it brings in the same amount of revenue and see what kind of impacts it is.
Right. I mean, the second impact is to make sure that our rate structure matches monthly billing. And the impact on that, as Mike mentioned, the extra cost of doing that monthly billing, as people, in looking at the budget, that's one of the things we put in the budget. We assume that we would start monthly billing about 6 months into this next fiscal year. So sometime in the summertime, September of FY22. So we budgeted for half a year of that. It's software wise, there's a lot of things that we want to run at least 1 quarter or 2 quarters of parallel to see that, because in a quarterly billing, our months aren't like a third, and a third. Some months of our billing might be 42% of the quarter. Some might only be the next month might be only 29% of the quarter. So depending on the how that billing works.
And that's definitely a national trend of utilities going monthly. As I mentioned
Right.
before, everybody else's bill is monthly, cable, electric, cell phone. It's
Yeah.
easier for customers to budget bill, so.
We've already started. I mean, Joe's on the line. He contacted our main bank, and we're looking at. It takes about 3 months. We'd really have to look at putting a lockbox in, which means instead of the bill coming here, the bill would go to a bank and they would process it and send us a data file. A lot of places you see that.
Let's not get into this detail. The two principal things that the board has already discussed is that we want to go to monthly billing. That's one thing. The second thing we discussed is we want to modify the rate structure. So we could go to monthly billing without changing the rate structure. And once we're in monthly billing, we can then modify the rate structure the way we want to. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. And certainly the directors, I don't think, are interested in the nuts and bolts of how this is going to happen. That's why we have staff. So I think we want to, it's obvious to me from the conversations going on thus far that Michael's presentation is a start. We need to do a lot more work. Maybe we need to assign this to a committee or we need some leadership as to what are the things we want to evaluate that would cause the board to agree to any changes in the rate structure.
Mhm.
I mean, Juan made a point. He made a point that it doesn't match the rest of the state. Fine. Maybe we need to look at the rest of the state so that the rest of us who haven't seen those rates see the difference there and see why we're different than the rest of the state. The explanation that Mark gave was very true. We had some big water users way back when, and we were afraid to disturb them. And this goes all the way back to American Water Company. So, this is something it's going to take us a good while. I don't think it's going to, changing the rates is not going to interfere with changing to a monthly rate. That part's got to go forward. We can make the plans for that. Changing the tier rate itself, the water rate, and phasing out or not phasing out the discount, that's a whole other subject.
Yeah,
Okay.
Alan, you're right. That's essentially alternative one is what you're suggesting, just going to monthly. And then the key word for the rest of it is gradualism. You got to gradually do these things because otherwise it's going to be such a hit in 1 year.
Yeah.
Michael, with your several options, was there a proposed change in that portion of the total bill that would be the service charge versus that which would be the usage charge? Or is the service charge going to stay the same except for those with the senior discount?
The service charge is still increased by the 4% or whatever the cost increase.
Oh, okay, right, but not yeah, I thought that was the thing we were really going to be looking at changing. I was looking at my bill and 2/3 of my cost, and I'm in the middle of the lower category, so to speak, of use, 2/3 is the service charge.
Yeah.
And so I could cut way back and it's not going to make a material difference. I'm using myself as sort of a model of a senior citizen. And
Yeah,
we're looking for,
you'll have a customer say, hey, why am I paying such a high fixed charge when I only use so much water? But technically 80% of your costs are fixed, other than chemicals and electricity, all your costs are fixed. So you could essentially put all the costs into the fixed charge, 80% of the costs, and they have a really high bill. So there's a balance there. A lot of other utilities are trying to get to, more fixed costs for revenue stability. They want to have less variable costs because, as I mentioned before, customers are using less water and you don't know what's going to happen. You have COVID hit, things like that. So I would not recommend trying to get more from a variable and less from fixed costs. I think you're right on in what you're doing there already.
Right, right.
But this is one of the things that has to be brought out in the rate study and in any presentation is the fixed versus the variable costs. All utilities can show that they have a high fixed cost, all the capital investment and everything else. And that's very true. But then there becomes a policy decision that we're not going to go and have the fixed cost recovered by a fixed fee that it's 90%. And so that it affects 90% of your bill. But you need to present that to the users, to the customers, so that they understand that.
Right. And that's what I wasn't hearing in our discussion this evening.
Well, I think there's work to be done. There's more work to be done. I mean, everyone's questions, we need to look at this. You're going to be able to forward this so we can see this and study it, the information you gave us. And we'll have to arrange either to assign this to a committee or let the whole board work at it. Maybe we set up a special committee to deal with this and let the three people concentrate on this, dig into it, and then come back. Or maybe the finance committee, since it's a money issue, maybe the finance committee wants to take this on.
Sure.
Yeah, and feel free to put your questions together, send them to Pam or Mark, and I can address them as I get them.
I think once we get the hard copy of your presentation, if we can get that sent out, or
Sure.
at least we'll have something in front of us to look at. Okay.
I mean, we've used the committee system to good advantage. Three people can deal with this in a closer association than if we have 9 people all trying to cope with this thing out of the blue. Once the 3 people pull it together, then it's exposed to everybody, and then people can throw shots or make changes to it. And anyone else can attend those meetings. But if we have a smaller group focusing on this, I think we'll come to a conclusion a lot quicker.
Sure. Okay. All right,
We have any other questions at the moment for Michael? I want to thank you, sir. Obviously, we'll continue with this. We appreciate what you've shown us, given us stuff to think about.
Thanks, Mike.
Thanks, man.
Let us go to the next item. We have number 5, and that is the task order addendum to the Pawtucket pipeline on phase 1.
Actually, staff is still reviewing that one, so I'd like to put it off till the next meeting.
Oh, okay. I guess we need to go now to the minutes. So we've got 6 minutes to go through. Entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the Personnel Compensation Committee of November 12th.
So moved.
That was
Second.
Don, and Bob said second. Any questions? Okay, everybody, let's raise your hand. If you say yes, it looks unanimous. Looks unanimous. That's passed. The next one is the minutes of the board meeting of November 18th. A motion to accept.
Make a motion that it gets accepted.
That's Bob, and a second from,
Second,
who was that?
second, Chris.
Chris. Okay, thank you. Any questions, discussions, comments? All those in favor, raise your hand. Again, it's unanimous. Third item is the meeting of the special meeting of the board of November 19th. Motion to approve those minutes.
the 19th minutes be accepted.
Second.
Okay, and any questions? Those in favor, raise your hands. Oh, I'm sorry, George, did you have a question? No, you were voting. Okay, everybody raise your hand if you're for it. Yes, Tom?
Oh,
Put your
yes, I
hand
voted
up.
in favor.
Okay, that's passed. The next one is the minutes of the special board meeting of November 24th.
A correction, Alan. The day of the week is Tuesday, not Thursday.
Oh, on November 24th, you mean?
Right.
Okay,
Move to accept as corrected.
all right. Any further comments, questions, corrections? All those in favor, raise your hand. Minutes are approved as modified. The next one is the minutes of the special board meeting of November 30th.
Move the
Entertain a
minutes be
motion.
accepted.
John
Move
is
the minutes be accepted.
made the motion. And Chris, second. Any questions or comments? All those in favor, raise your hand. It's accepted. And finally, the minutes of Friday, the special board meeting of Friday, December 4th.
So moved.
Chris moved it.
Second.
Second, Bob. Someone has the question?
Yep, I sent over a change to Pam and to Lauren. There was just a slight change that needed to be made where it has number 4, the heading, announcement, Ray, Executive Director and Chief Engineer. That should just be moved to right, so the second page, right above where it says Chairman Alan Klepper welcomes Steve Kutu and announced that he will join on January 18, 2021.
Oh.
A friendly amendment.
Okay. Oh, I see. You mean the comment should be put at the top of that page.
No, the heading number 4.
Yes.
Should be moved above that because it's splitting up what actually was under the disclosure of executive session vote.
The only thing after that is the one sentence by Alan and then adjournment.
Yes. So yes.
Okay, I got you. All right, but that will be corrected in the final copy.
Yep.
So let's get the motion modified so that
to approve as
it's accepted with the
modified.
modification. All right. Tom said yes. Everybody raise your hand. This is with the modification that corrects the thing. It is accepted. Very good. Okay, we're on to Executive Director's Report.
Okay, just wanted to mention under the succession plan for Executive Director, as we know, Steve Kutu has been now appointed as future Executive Director. He'll be starting next month, and we did have some discussion about promoting Mike Crawford. I just wanted to let you know we've been working that out with Steve, and Mike Crawford will be promoted to Deputy Director. We're in the process of working out the job description, and that'll take place coming up as well. So just wanted to let the board know that we had moved forward with that.
Very good.
And did want to mention Lauren's online. She doesn't have a camera yet on her computer, so you can't see her, but hopefully by the next meeting. Lauren is our new Sid, and Sid is retiring this week. So Lauren will be in charge of the work that Sid did, and with all the board issues, correspondence, and meetings, and so on. So you'll be hearing a lot more from her in the future. And I also wanted to mention did have a meeting for the dam removal project with the public. We invited all the abutters. We advertised with the town, at the towns and in the newspapers. We had about 30 people online for the presentation. It went very well. We went through all of the issues from removing both dams and where the project status is at this point. Most of the design is completed and are looking to start submitting for permits in January. So we wanted to give the public some chance to ask questions and to get some responses to what their concerns were with the removal of the dam. We do have a couple of people to get back to, but everything went very well and there was a lot of interest. We had a couple of board members participated. Thank you for doing that as well. But Parb put on a very excellent presentation, and Wenley Ferguson, who's been very supportive with Save the Bay, also provided a lot of the water quality data and updated the information for that. Remediation at Hope Street is complete for this year. A little too late to take care of the soils. We were also still in negotiations with the abutters, and Joe will be talking about that later. We have an update in executive session.
Was aware of it. Somebody had to, you know.
Meanwhile, we're moving forward with the TD Bank bond. They actually would have had, they came through just about 4 o'clock today with a commitment letter. So we'll need to set up a special meeting of the board sometime next week to vote for a locked in for a rate and for the commitment to obtaining the bond. So we'll have that information for you the beginning of next week. And that's about it for my report, unless you have any questions.
Pam, will the pipeline leak repair be impacted by the weather we're expecting tomorrow?
And actually, I was going to have Mike do a quick update on that.
Okay.
We're just about ready to go.
Yes, the clamp, we had a specially made clamp for the repair. We did receive it late Friday from Texas, but sadly, yes, the weather's going to have a little bit of an impact on us. To stabilize the installation, it's going to require some support. So that support is going to drag us into a multi-day installation. And now with the snow, it wouldn't be feasible to pour the concrete and get the forms and everything done. So to not get ourselves in a jam up against the storm, we thought it was wise to delay. Hopefully the weather in that area isn't too bad, and we get some good melt and get a window next week. But everything's stable. We insulated the entire area to protect it from freezing. Inspected it today, no ice, no signs of frost. So everything seems stable, but we do hope to pursue the installation, stabilize the underneath with a concrete cradle, and hopefully get in and out of there pretty quickly without additional mobilizations from the contractor.
Very good.
The chairman, Pam noted that Sid will be retiring next week. I'd like to make a motion that the chairman send an appropriate letter of appreciation to Sid for all her cooperation and help to the board over all these past years.
Absolutely. I'll second that motion. And I would let you know that I'm preparing a special poem for her in that event as well.
So I was going to propose that we just call Lauren Sid. We don't have to make too many changes.
There you go.
Okay, everybody would like to vote for that. There will be a resolution for honoring Sid for her service, which I think is over 30 years.
Right. We may want to add Sharon to that, who retired tomorrow as well. She has 21 years in customer service. So we may want to include something for Sharon as well.
Sure,
If you
makes
give
sense.
us the detail, if you give me the detail, we will have everything set so that the board will see it. And at
Right.
one of our forthcoming meetings, the board will see exactly what's been put together and we'll have a chance to vote on it formally. No question.
I want to personally also thank Sid, because I know you, Alan, would appreciate as a chairman, what help she has been to us in particular.
Absolutely.
As chairman.
Absolutely. She's put up with a lot. And unfortunately, or maybe for her, fortunately, she never said a word while she watched us argue and beat each other bloody. So,
Oh, believe me, she can argue. And,
okay. Executive, let's see, financial report. Mark?
I'm just going to have Sue give a quick update on our construction season.
Oops, there we go. Hello. Well, we finally finished. That's the good news. Last week was the final week of finishing up the work in the roadways. They did get temporary pavement in all the areas. So the only thing that will happen in the spring will be some permanent paving. All of Warren especially will need permanent paving, and then Hope Street in Bristol will need permanent paving. So that, and maybe some loaming and seeding and other small punch list items will get done in the spring. But so we unfortunately had a few cold nights with the bypass pipe, but at least with this storm, we had all of our pipes off of the street. There is an agenda item coming up where we just need to, we're asking for an approval to modify the amount for the inspection fees. We're not going to be going over the total that was originally approved because we did have a contingency. So we don't need additional money, but we are going over on the inspection amount. The police will also go over, but that again will come out of the contingency.
Fair enough.
And we've started the design for next year's project. We hired PAR, you awarded that last board meeting. So PAR has started the surveying for next year's project.
Fair enough. Thank you. Any questions?
I have a question.
Sure.
Sue, when we talked about Hope Street in Bristol, I think in the original start, I believe you indicated that all of Hope Street was going to get repaid by the state. Is that still true?
I'll check back with them. I believe it's on their plan. When we checked, it was for a couple of years out, or when we started this project, it was planned for a couple of years out, which is why they were requiring us to pave half the roadway, curb to center line in most of the area we're doing work in. But I will check on that in the spring before we do that paving to make, obviously, if they're going to pave it soon afterwards, we wouldn't need to do our paving, but it was far enough out that they still required us to do mill and overlay for half the road. So we'll check, but usually their projects go further out, not sooner. So. But we'll check.
Thank you. Thanks.
Any other questions? Okay, I think we're all set. Randy's report was pretty copacetic. All right, let's move to the next item, number 9. Excuse me, the financial report. Mark.
You can skip me. No,
Okay.
no. I want to try to be brief, but give you some just an idea of what's going on. In the packets was the October statement. If you read through it, it kind of very similar to the previous months, nothing earth-shattering there. We're having a heck of a year, as I've said before, despite the COVID. I'm just putting the finishing touches on the November statements, and we're going to see kind of a slowdown in November. So not enough to impact anything major for the year to date. But we had a few timing issues at the end of November, right at the end of Thanksgiving. That some reads were done late in the month. They weren't posted to December. And I've taken some accruals to bring those were really November numbers. I brought them back into November, just to be a little more equitable so that December wouldn't be overinflated. So that's, but November, I should have those the end of the week, depending on the snow. Just a couple of milestones I brought to Pam's attention this week. Our pension trust had an unbelievable November in gains. We were up about $360,000 because of the changes in the market. And for the year, we're up, I think, $625,000 on $4.5 million, which is almost 14% since July 1st. So we're making some strong progress for our earnings for this current pension year, which is July to the end of June. So we're going to hit we brought our funding is based on only 6%, but we've already earned 14. If that can hold up for the rest of the year, we're going to be in pretty good shape with our balances and get us closer to that 100% funding. Another milestone, our OPEB trust, which we started 7 or 8 years ago, is a tad under $900,000, and with this year's contribution, will be over $1 million in the OPEB trust. Probably in the state, percentage-wise, we're probably ahead of. I can't think of anybody, and the numbers we've looked at that have enough put away in a trust for OPEB that we'll have by the end of the year. So those are two good, I consider, milestone numbers. In a crap year, we're having a pretty good year.
What was our goal originally, Pam? How much were we going to grow that OPEB trust?
Generally, we were looking at about 100,000 a year. So we wanted to get up into I believe Mark was 2 million.
Oh, okay, 2 million. All right, so it's on the way.
Yes.
Okay, good.
Doing well. We don't tap that, and a lot of the actuary that does our study, they look at it as tap. You tap it to use some of it to pay OPEB, but our OPEB numbers are not. We've frozen OPEB for new hires, so that's going to take the effect, just like the switch from the pension to the 457. We thought that was going to take a long time, but after Pam and I leave, there's only going to be 5 or 6 people left in the pension. So as that funding will continue to drop significantly for pension, but as new people join the 457, that matching is going to go up.
Understand.
And we went over this with George and the finance committee, looking at some of those numbers of why that matching fee went up in the 457. So.
And eventually we were looking at the fact that the trust would begin to pay the OPEB. Probably in about 10 to 15 years, we would no longer need to contribute to the OPEB, and we could also have the trust pay the OPEB expenses. So in the long run, the pensions will be going down, the 457 contributions will be going up, the salaries go up, but it showed over the long run, we would be paying considerably less for the 457 than we are paying now for the pension and the OPEB.
Understand. Good planning.
So,
any other questions of Mark?
Yeah, anybody else have anything on anything? And always feel free to call me one-on-one. Maybe not tomorrow, snow day, maybe. But
okay. Thank you, Mark.
I'm here.
Let's go to number 9, the pair task order addendum.
This is the one Sue mentioned. It's the additional inspection services. They were essentially underestimated to begin with for the amount of time that it actually took to do the project. So the costs are justified. We did use the inspector and the police as needed on the projects. So, and as Sue mentioned, it's not an additional money to be awarded to the project. It is contained within the original contingency.
So the motion then should read to award to PAR an additional 48,765 funds coming from the contingency.
So
Yes.
moved.
I'll
Second,
second that.
all right, any questions? All in favor, raise your hand. George? Put your hand up. Good, thank you. Unanimous. Done.
Thank you.
Okay, the Finance Committee.
Okay.
You're muted, George.
George, you're muted. There you go.
The Finance Committee met about a week ago and went over drafts of the infrastructure and capital plan with an amount of $13,055,000 and also a draft of the operations and maintenance budget with amount of $9,243,726. We also began preliminary discussions on the rate analysis, which has not been completed. We plan to meet again, as I might have mentioned, in about 2 weeks to finalize that. But here, we have the opportunity for both Pam and Mark to perhaps briefly go over the budgeting in their area. And if Pam would please speak to the capital budget plan, that would be great.
Okay. With the committee, we went over it line by line, but I think for the board, we can do a little more of a general overview. But as I mentioned, I'm color coded, and the color coding is based on the type of expense. Our general infrastructure expense, which is looked at in somewhat of a legal sense as to what would be available for bond funding and also required by Rhode Island law that we provide a reserve fund for, is in the blue. That's our cash fund. The green is all of our capital expenses that are applied to other areas, such as instrumentation for our pump stations, any of the facilities that need additional work. For example, our elevator, we're still trying to get that through, hopefully in the spring. As I mentioned before, we're getting close. We're close to having final design plans, but now everything's too expensive. So we're waiting a little bit to actually do the bids for that. So hopefully the prices will be coming down. I do have in next year's budget, the Pawtucket pipeline costs for the first phase. And also looking at perhaps some of the design work and studies for the phase 2. Distribution is the Hope Street Pump Station, which will be our major expense for next year, as in that area, as well as about $2.5 million for the Metacom project. Metacom project is for increasing the pressure zone along with the pump station in the higher elevations in Bristol. And then various other pretty much annual expenses, basic equipment, pumps, valves, services. We're replacing a lot of our galvanized services, especially those that have or suspected to have lead goosenecks. A lot of those are actually on Hope Street, and so it gets a little expensive to work in the state road. And then it's just broken down at the bottom by where those expenses fall, whether it's going to be a bond, which is the brown, is the bank bond. And then further out, when I got into the 20-year plan, I'm showing how we're paying for the Pawtucket pipeline phase 2, which is all in the pink, which we're going to borrow from the infrastructure bank. It makes more sense to borrow from the infrastructure bank for longer term projects because they only charge us the interest as we use the funds. And they break that up for us to be as least expensive as possible as well. So that's the draft capital plan for next year. If you have any particular questions, I'd be happy to answer those.
Pam, thank you very much. And Mark has been getting ready to go over a review of the operational budget. And Mark, would appreciate your comments briefly about the operational budget.
Okay. Spent a lot of time with George and the committee going basically line by line, answering a lot of questions. And I was long-winded and I started to put people to sleep. So we want to go through this. Mike Crawford's agreeing, he's laughing over. Want to keep it simple, just to kind of give an overview. The overall operations budget, as our rate study people said, the operations budget is kind of a lot of fixed costs, buying the water, payroll. These numbers, fit in pretty well. We do an analysis of each section, and we're proposing an increase total of 3.4% over last year's budget. Basically from 8.9 million to 9.2. Historically, when I do a budget, I'm conservative in both ends. I keep the revenues on the low side to protect us if we have a bad year. But I also, that if we, hopefully we'll do better. And historically, we usually do about 5 or 6% over our revenue budget for the actual year. In the same manner, we, expense-wise, we budget a little higher for everything, worst case scenarios. And historically, we usually come in about 5 or 6% under budget for expenses. So I consider that the best of both possible worlds to do. And I think in FY21, we're on target to do the same thing for FY21. 22 has a few little twists in it that you'll see. Most administratively and payroll is pretty fixed. The cost of water for Providence with the rate increase was about 18, I think 19%, somewhere in there. We had raised it up, and that 6 months of that was for this year. So we budgeted up 10% for FY21. So to get up to that total of the 18, it's another 10%. So I'm basically up that 18, 19% over 2 years ago. And we're right on target, I think, with where billings are going to be for that. You'll see there's an increase in computer expenses, and some of the reasons for that, we've brought a lot of the costs that were software and computer maintenance costs that were spread in administration and operations and in the computer area, and we've moved all those costs into the computer area, into Randy's area. So there's a lot of costs that we haven't had before in that area. There's software maintenance on the antennas, the towers, and all that. That are basically new items that we're incorporating there. So there's an increase in the computer expenses there. You can see pilot taxes are just about gone away. So with that phase out, I'm just trying to hit the high points here. If you have it in front, if you go to the last page, there's a difference between the way the auditors look at our books is our operation budget are for standard things that happen every year. So that 9.2 million is for standard operation expenses. Right at the very end, there's a $9,000 category. 9,000 is a category of other items, other income and expenses, not related, that are non-recurring, that are like a one-time shot for the year. And in FY22, we have one major one is the demolition of the water treatment plant. That's considered a non-recurring expense. It's not part of the main operations expense, but it's treated as a one-time shot. And the auditors will present that on the annual statement as a one-time shot. The $1 million still comes off our bottom line, but after the operations budget is in there. And then in years after that, the demolition of the dams, the removal of the dams, again, those are one-time expenses that we do have some grant money coming in to offset some of those costs. But those are going to be outside of a normal year of operating. So that would come in FY 23 and 24, the net cost for that as other numbers after the fact of operations. So if anybody has any questions on that part of it, any questions on the overall budget? And again, I urge anybody, if they have a question, feel free to call me or send me an email. And I give a lot of answers to the board, just specific questions. If you don't ask it, I can answer anything that you might have.
I understand that George and his crew went over detail line by line with you.
That's
And
correct.
I presume if they had questions or comments about it, you answered them satisfactorily.
That's
Is that
correct.
correct, George? You're satisfied with the budget as presented?
Yes.
Is the board ready to vote on this, or we want to wait and do
Well,
this?
let me, Alan, as I mentioned before, the Finance Committee plans to meet again the first or second week of January
Okay.
to come up with the approved numbers for the capital budget and the operational budget, and also a recommended number for the rate increase. So until we get to that point in time, we don't have any numbers to recommend to the board, but we will at that meeting have numbers, and we'll present them to the board at the meeting in January.
Very good. Very good. Thank you. Like the progress being made.
Part B of that is, go ahead, Pam.
We actually have to do the public hearing for any proposed rate increase. So
Right.
generally, we do that first, and then the board will actually vote on a rate increase and on the budgets following the public hearing. We may propose a rate increase. So we may want to, before we do a public hearing, we may want to have a general meeting of the board just to propose a certain percentage as to where we are recommending before the public hearing.
I understand.
Yeah, I think, Joe, you were involved in exactly how we worded the meeting as such as a rate increase up to and not to exceed. So if you just kind of remind us of what we need to do in that advertisement.
Will, yep.
Okay.
Mark,
Moving forward. That's good.
Mark,
Right.
Mark, what was our projected rate increase for this year?
Just to be real brief, everybody, there's two studies that I did. One created a 10-year debt service, assuming that we do the phase 2 with Pawtucket by ourselves. The second one was based on the fact that they shared equally in the costs of that. So you can see in the 10-year debt service, instead of us borrowing $40 million from an infrastructure bank, it might take 4 years to get up to that. And it looks like there's a 3-year tier where we're going to do interest only and then kick in. That's the reason, as I said to the committee, why we pushed this new TD Bank refunding at 5 years. We want that to fall off our radar. So when the bulk of the infrastructure bank loan comes in, that it moves right in, keeps the debt service flatter over the course of time.
Understand.
But it came out very, very, very simple. The 10-year analysis to complete all the tasks that Pam has on her capital plan if we do all of those, borrow the money needed to do it, use the cash that she has designated for that. If we do the without East Providence, it looks like a flat increase of 4% in years 1 through 10 will allow us to cover that debt fine. If they join in and pay 50%, a 3% increase will cover us to cover half of the project plus all the bonding required on the additional project that Pam has outlined on her capital budget. So it's Alan, I know you're a proponent of slow and steady, 3% across the board versus a 4%. I think part of the consensus of the committee, George, you can agree that thought not knowing which direction we were going, 4% seemed maybe the direction we may want to go this year, or I even said 3.5, halfway in the middle of them coming in or not, to start off the next 10 years. But that's where we are in simplicity.
What did we project that it was going to be this year or last year when we were talking about this?
I think we had 3. I think in the projections we had last year, 3 across the board, which coincides with them joining in with us. But we all got to. We look at the presentation that was made tonight. That pipeline is not going to happen overnight. We have a lot of obstacles, and to make sure we're on the right track. That depending when we're going to need that money, that might be pushed out a little further. But it's going to be interesting, fun. Pam and I won't be here, but unless I'm convinced to stay. But it worked out well. I with the transition of Sid and Pam leaving, Steve coming on, I think I'll work a lot with Steve when he comes on to bring him up to speed, how everything works here, how all the finances work. So it made sense that I didn't leave the same time as Pam.
Understand.
So
basically,
that's where we are.
Thank you very much, Mark.
George, have you picked a date to have your finance committee?
Pam and I are working on that now. Spoke
Okay.
to her just yesterday, I believe. And as Mark mentioned, there are 2 spreadsheets out there over the 10-year period of time that show the 4% and the 3% rates. There's a lot of detail there, so they're available to look at. So that's information we've had, and if there's more information, we'll bring it to the board meeting too. But the information he provided is complete and very detailed. So Mark and Pam, thank you again.
All the information that was sent also went to the rate study people, and they went through it, and I think they felt it all made sense in the long-term review. So
I don't know if you mentioned this, Mark, all the detailed information for the capital plan and the operational budget and for the rate analyses are out on the website. So that's a good place to look for that information, because the size of the print can be ballooned up, as we all know. So thank you again, Mark and Pam.
Good.
Okay. We're next ready to go to the executive session, number 11. After that will there be anything other than announcing that our board meeting is on the 28th of January, although we might have another meeting in the middle of that to deal with bonds.
No, there'll be no votes. There'll be no votes taken.
Okay, so let's enter executive session for the Hope Street tank site litigation pursuant to Rhode Island General Law 42465A2. Who'll make that motion?
I will.
Bob does. I need a second.
Second.
Second from Chris. Everyone in favor, raise your hand. Okay, it is noted. Juan, put your hand up. Thank you. We all voted yes. All right, we're now recording. We're now in open session. And I guess the only thing to announce is that our next regular board meeting will be January 28th. We will likely have another board meeting to approve a bond issue. Is that correct, Pam?
Yes.
Okay, that'll be announced early in January. And the Finance Committee is going to have another meeting, and we will have a public hearing sometime in January as well regarding the rate increase.
And Alan,
Yes.
we need a motion to seal the minutes.
Correct. All those in favor, I need a motion to that effect by Bill, seconded by Tom. All those in favor, raise your hand. I think that squares it away. And if we need a motion to adjourn, dissolve the meeting, and everyone have a Merry Christmas.
So moved.
Happy holiday.
Merry Christmas, everyone.
Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Yes, Merry Christmas.
Thank you all.